How do you know what you're capable of? You don't. And well, I did say earlier that if you speak the truth, you can't possibly be expected to be accepted everywhere, right? So I guess I'll tell you this, 'cause I won't expect to be accepted. So many of you guys, you're capable of so much more, and yet you may never realize it because you're coming up and you're growing up in a place and in a time when you're being deprived of the opportunities to be heroic. How do you know how many monkey bars you can go across if you've got someone standing there trying to stop you from doing it because you might get hurt? You realize that we had a secure campus drill today because of water? Because it was windy. And I understand.
Hurricane, okay, sure.
I understand. There was no hurricane. There was a tornado warning in San Diego County.
It wasn't even here. It was like
Yeah, it wasn't even in here. It wasn't even here. And all you had to, to figure that out, here's how you know if there's going to be a tornado. Tornadoes have a very distinct look to them. They look like a tornado. And yet we sat here and we used this phrase, out of an abundance of caution. It's not an abundance of caution, it's abundance of cowardice. Well, but what if someone got hurt? What if? We'll never know, will we? Because we'll never have had the opportunity to go out there and stand outside in some... By the way, when that happened, guess what I did? I went outside. I didn't look outside. That's no way, man. I want to look outside. I want to be outside. I don't want to watch television. I want to be doing the things that you see on television. I went outside, and guess what I found out there?
Nothing.
No, I found some cool stuff. It was windy, and it was rainy. Dope, huh? I've never stood in rain like that before. I've never stood in wind like that before. I have an umbrella called a Vortex. I just bought it. It's a Vortex umbrella. This umbrella, Vortex. You can't just call it a Vortex. I looked at it and I said, a Vortex umbrella. My goodness, you can't just name it that, right? It's got to be something spectacular. And I looked at it and it explains on the tag, this umbrella will withstand 70-mile-an-hour winds. Yeah.
no way.
Yeah, way. That's what the tag says. So I said, I grabbed my umbrella and I went outside. And when the wind picks up, it like blows your umbrella, so it goes, the Vortex withstood whatever mile-an-hour winds those were. And I sat there and said, I can trust this Vortex now. Because I've never been in a wind like this before, and it withstood this wind, which means that I will now know that I can now trust in my Vortex. My Vortex umbrella had the opportunity to be heroic. If it didn't, if I had the umbrella inside and said, out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to ensure that my umbrella never has to face high winds. Well, what if the high winds of life come someday? What if they get worse than this? And I'm standing with my umbrella going, I don't know if my Vortex is ready. I've always protected it. How do I find out? Just by throwing it out there in 60-mile-an-hour winds just to see what happens? Isn't it better to find out earlier on what you're capable of? And then to kind of push those limits and those lines? The lines are immaterial, man, I'm telling you. Unless, of course, you think you can. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're probably right. I'm sure you've heard that before. But think about, fine, old man Scanlon. Yeah, your goddamn playgrounds have mulch on them. In other words, in my day, we used to get on the swings and you'd swing as far and as high as you could. And you guys still do this? And then what happens when you hit that peak on top as high as you can go on the swing? What do? You jump, goddamn right. And you start flying. And you're in the air for like a good 20, 30 seconds, it feels like. It's more like 3 or 2. But you fly as far as you can. And it's amazing when you think about how far, when you were a little kid, how you'd fly a good 100, maybe 200 feet. And then you go back when you're older and you see it and you realize, oh, I flew like 5, 6 feet. But it felt like 100 when you're a little kid. And if you're there looking at it, what you can be sure of is that you did not die when that happened. But you found out something, which is that you had the courage to do it. And you had friends around you who were telling you, do it, I dare you. You can withstand a dare. Only a fool follows a dare. But a real man follows a double dog dare. No matter what it is. A double dog dare, you run across the freeway. Okay. Maybe you don't survive it. Of course you do. And then what do you have? Well, you have a great story, but better yet, you have a reason to believe in yourself. Like right now, you don't have any reason to believe what your limits are unless you really tested them. And unless you've really tested them lately, you have no idea what you're capable of. You have an imagination, but largely you've probably been sheltered for a large parts of our lives. And who's to blame for that? I don't know that anyone's to blame for it. It's just part of Western culture. We don't have bombs dropping around us like there are in a lot of other countries. We have such incredible, intense safety in our Western societies to the point that we don't even realize how safe they are. Even when you say, well, I don't know, man, the streets of National City not safe compared to the streets of Baghdad. Oh yeah, they are. Compared to the streets of Mogadishu. Oh yeah, yeah. Even the U.S. cities on our most dangerous days are safer than a lot of places around the world. I'm not saying they're as safe as they could be, but that's the problem. Is that we look at it and go, well, it's not as safe as it could be, but it's relatively incredibly safe. And there's a thing that when we have high safety, we have a tendency now to shrink away from danger. In other words, like when you look at how countries begin, how civilizations begin, I thought about giving you guys this essay, but if it doesn't fit into what we're doing. I've been wanting to give it for years. It's by a guy named Glubb, Sir John Glubb. It's on the trajectory of civilizations. It's relatively short. If you want to copy it, let me know. I can print you a copy of it. But in short, he points out that civilizations follow this trend where they do this, and he points out that there are 5 different stages of civilizational development. And you've got one here called the pioneering phase, which is basically the screw it, man, nothing to lose. And you just go for it, you take risks. And when you go for it, you take risks, your civilization gets established. And by the way, this is not just civilizations, this is corporations as well, companies. If you want to start a business, know this stuff. Because when you first go for it, like you're going to start a new search engine, so you're like, Google, we got this, let's go after Google. Are you ever going to defeat Google? Yeah, that's right. Because if you'd said no, I'd have said not with that attitude. So you go for it, and you have some early victories. And then you hit your next stage where you really hit your stride. And now you've got that vigor behind you of the we're going for it kind of a thing. But you've also got some resources behind you. So now that momentum is going. And then you hit the zenith where, and by the way, you can see what the values are of those civilizations. The values down here: courage, honor, commitment, duty. Tell me if those things sound familiar to you. And then you pass a certain stage where now you've got some stuff because you've been successful. And the people who first established your company or your country or your civilization are no longer around. So the people here didn't get to see what it took to get to this point. So now the people who are here are prosperous, and we just kind of want to protect what we already have. And now we can afford to be safe because we want to protect what we have. But here's the problem with safety. Safety doesn't innovate. You need to risk in order to innovate. You need to take chances. And if you become soft because you're not used to taking chances, this downfall is inevitable. And what's interesting is at the second to last stage down here, we now start to resent the warriors. We start to resent the people who are strong and literally become the fighters, the literal fighters. That doesn't mean that we have to always just admire, love the people who are fighting, but think about, if somebody comes up to you today and punches you in the face, what are you supposed to do? Go find the adult. Go find somebody else, because violence is never the. I'm sorry, let me clutch my pearls first. Violence is never the answer. Well, if violence is never the answer, why are you going to go call a cop? What's the cop going to do? Go reason with the person? You understand that was wrong, right? Let's have a peer mediation meeting about this. No, the cop is going to. Well, we've seen what the cops do. What the cops will do. Sometimes a little bit too much. But you get the idea. None of us believes that violence is never the answer. What we believe is sometimes I'm not capable of it myself. So let me go find somebody who is capable of it, pay them a few dollars to do the violence for me. None of us believes that war is never the answer. Tell me that during World War II, the war was not the answer to that? You wanted to sit down with Hitler and over some coffee and have a talk, address his felt needs? No, violence, of course, is sometimes the problem. Here's the problem. Violence, of course, is sometimes the answer. Not always. Not even most of the time. But sometimes you have to be capable of it. When you get to this point in a civilization, though, we refuse to fight for stuff because We just want to go about our days. We just want to go and live our luxurious lives. We not even really, and by the way, we also at this point are complaining about it because we don't realize how good we have it. And then of course the eventual collapse and downfall. And this has to do with moral decadence. Our moral standards go out the windows. We rephrase language. All kinds of horrible but predictable things. And this guy wrote this essay a very long time ago. He wasn't talking about the United States. He was talking about the British Empire. He was talking about the Assyrians, talking about the Babylonians, talking about the Romans. He's talking about the Greeks. He talked about the Ottoman Empire. He's going all throughout history and painting this trajectory and showing how most empires last about 300 years. Coming up on it, aren't we, in the United States? And you can see this pattern. It's like, are you sure he didn't write this in 2024 and then go into time machine back? No, he wrote that. He wrote that back then. There were corporations. When you look at the Fortune 500 companies, look at the original list of Fortune 500 companies and compare it to the list that's out right now. Very few of those original companies are on the list right now. Why? They got to here. They couldn't innovate. They were afraid of losing. They had responsibilities to their shareholders. They had to be really accountable, fiduciary responsibility. And then they wouldn't innovate, and then because they didn't innovate, somebody else came along and took them over. You guys don't have a sense of it, probably. I barely do. But Yahoo, you've heard of Yahoo?
Right.
Yahoo was like the search engine, man. And then this new company came along called Google. Now Google's what they were. Now people again go, oh, Google's too big. Same thing they said about Yahoo. Nobody can overtake Google. They said the same thing about Yahoo. Can you? It's possible. But the thing is that you have to have opportunities to be heroic. You know, like Danny was saying, we're constantly being told, be safe, and of an abundance of caution, be safe, be safe, be safe, as though safety is the highest virtue. What happens if you're not safe? I don't know. Find out. But what you do find is that, you guys have heard my shins before, yes? I played my shins for you?
Oh, I think you should.
No, my shins. You guys ever heard my shins before? Oh, you're missing out.
Jeez, how hard is that? Dang.
I have some great videos of me kicking the poles outside from a couple of years ago. Why do my shins sound like that?
Because they're hard.
Yeah, but why? How?
You train them back.
Train in Muay Thai, and when you train Muay Thai, what happens is you kick stuff. You kick it with your shin, and your shin breaks. You go, boom, ow! And then a couple of days later, it's healed. What happens is it calcifies. Calcium goes in there, and it actually ends up harder than it was before. That's the process of dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of microfractures throughout my shins. So now if you come over and you kick me in the shin, and I block your shin with my shin, I hope if we're fighting, it's gonna hurt you more than me. I won't know until you do it. And there are Muay Thai fighters, by the way, out there in Thailand who kick trees, banana trees, and they chop down banana trees with their legs. It's amazing. If you type in Google Muay Thai, banana tree, you'll just find video after video of guys just going crazy and kicking trees until they fall down. Yeah, and you look at that and you're like, Scal, you got hard shins. I'm like, no. You guys see Ruokao kicking down a banana tree. That guy's got hard shins. The point of it is that that's how you get stronger. You fracture things, you break things, things rebuild, they rebuild stronger. You take a chance, you find out what works, what doesn't work, and then you come back stronger. But you don't get stronger just by saying, it doesn't look safe. I know how to get out of a riptide. Maybe you guys go swimming at the beach, you guys go surfing. You ever been in a rip current before? Yeah, do you know how to get out of a rip current? Yeah, of course not, unless you've done it. You can know intellectually, well, you have to swim at an angle in. Don't swim at an angle in, dude. Have courage. What you need to do is, because the rip current is a current that pulls you out, so no matter how hard you're paddling, and that's not true. When you're paddling super, super hard, the current's still dragging you out. You're not going anywhere except for back out. This is why swimmers die in rip currents. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go outside the rip current, because once you realize that a rip current is only about 40 yards wide, and it only drags you out at the farthest 80 to 100 yards. So look at a football field. That's as far away from the beach that the rip current's gonna drag you. Once you realize that, understand it intellectually, but then once you actually get caught in one, now I go out to the beach and I go surfing and I see a rip current. You know what I do? I jump on the rip current. Because now I don't have to paddle out. I can just jump on the rip current, and I use the rip current to drag me out. And people say, dude, that's dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that. That's really dangerous. Yeah, I suppose so if you've never done it before. But once you get used to it, it's not dangerous anymore. Now it's helpful. It saves me from having to paddle out. It gets me out there faster. I can catch better waves because I can go deeper out. But if you get caught in it, what happens the first couple of times? You could die, I suppose. But not from if you're on a surfboard, you're not gonna die. If you're swimming, you might die just because you get tired. But what you're supposed to do is once you realize it's only 40 yards wide, you're supposed to swim outside the current. Once you swim outside the current, you might get dragged out a little bit, but now there's no more current and you just go in. But if you panic because you're not used to it, usually you could drown out there. It's possible. But you don't know that unless you test it. Try it out. Get tired. I remember I was the first one I was on, or second one I was on my surfboard and I was just paddling like crazy. And a lifeguard came out on his jet ski and he's like, "You okay?" And I said, "Outstanding," just going. And he said, "Need some help?" I said, "Nope, got it." Just paddling away, and I was still getting further out. He says, "You're going farther." I said, "I know." I don't need his criticism right now. And then he goes out, he comes back and just says, "You want me to tow you in?" And I said to him, "I would rather die out here." So he says, "Okay," and he went somewhere else. I'm like, you gonna leave me? But I figured it out. And then once you figure it out, then you get back to the beach and you're like, I'm exhausted, but I was tired. You wait 10 minutes and you get back out and you go do it again until you get better at it. Then all of a sudden now rip currents, like I said, now I ride them out there. You get used to it. Whatever it is in your life that that you're afraid to take a risk on, take a risk. What's the worst that can happen? You know you're gonna die, right? Everything else is just finding out what your limits are. You already know the ultimate limit. Maybe finding out what can take you there.